is Jeremy MacKenzie. Mr. MacKenzie will be testifying via video conference, so if we could just make sure that Mr. MacKenzie can hear us and that we can hear him.
Can you hear us, Mr. MacKenzie?
Yes, I can, sir.
Okay, good. Well, we're ready for your testimony, so we're going to have you sworn, and I see you have counsel here. So let's, should we first swear the witness and, okay?
Mr. MacKenzie, will you swear on a religious document or do you wish to affirm?
I will affirm.
For the record, please state your full name and spell it out.
Jeremy Mitchell MacKenzie, JeremyMitchell
Do you solemnly affirm that the evidence to be given by you to this commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Okay.
Turn the mic on.
Afternoon, Mr. Commissioner. My name is Sharif Boda. I'm counsel to Jeremy MacKenzie. Mr. MacKenzie was summoned to testify here this afternoon. His testimony is compelled. I would just like to make clear that he is invoking his protections under the Canada and Ontario Evidence Acts to protect his interests against self-incrimination. And of course, he benefits from the protection of Section 13 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Okay, and I will deem that the witness has objected to answer each and every question on the ground that his answers may intend to incriminate him or tend to establish his liability to a civil proceeding at the instance of the Crown or any person, but for the acts you've invoked. Okay, is that adequate?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
Okay, so Mr. MacKenzie, we're ready to go. Commission counsel, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Good afternoon, Mr. MacKenzie. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
My name is John Mather. I'm one of the Commission counsel. You are appearing today via video conference from the Saskatoon Correctional Center. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And we understand that you are being held in relation to charges in a matter that is unrelated to the protests in Ottawa and Coutts. Is that correct?
That's correct.
The Commission understands that you are from Nova Scotia. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up in Pictou County, Nova Scotia.
And we understand that you were a member of the Canadian Armed Forces?
That's correct. From 2003 until 2017.
And what rank did you achieve in the Armed Forces?
I retired as a Master Corporal.
And you have produced a letter through your counsel to the Commission, and it's a letter that you sent to the Senate. Do you know what I'm referring to?
I believe so, yes.
So if we could pull up JMK 703. Mr. MacKenzie, can you first just let me know if you can see the document on the screen and you're able to read what it says?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. And this is a letter that's entitled Diagolon's List of Demands to the Canadian Senate. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, and I'll ask you some questions about Diagolon in a moment. And can you just confirm for us if we can scroll down to the bottom? Just again, for the Commission's benefit, but also potentially yours, we see that it has a signature block for you at the bottom. And there's no signature here. Do you know if you ever signed this letter?
No, I sent it digitally to the Senate members.
Okay. And do you recall when you sent it to the Senate?
It was several days before the Emergency Act was revoked by the government.
Sorry,
perhaps 3.
And sorry, and with the audio, I just didn't catch that. Did you say before it was invoked or revoked?
Before it was revoked by the government, perhaps 3 days, 3 or 4 days.
Thank you. We can take the letter down, but Mr. MacKenzie, I'm going to ask you some questions, and if you need to look at the letter, just let me know, okay?
Yes, sure.
In the letter to the Senate, you describe yourself as a podcaster and a comedian. I take it that's accurate?
Yes, it is.
And it's the commission's understanding that you podcast under the name Raging Dissident. Is that correct?
Yes.
And at one time you had a YouTube channel. Is that correct?
Yes.
And do you know at any point? Do you know how many followers that YouTube channel had?
I have had several that have been removed by YouTube for various reasons. Several times it's been 10,000, 12,000. I think the highest may have been 12 or 13,000.
Okay. And you also have a Telegram channel?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how many followers have you had? I appreciate you were giving some ranges there on your Telegram channel.
Roughly, I would say upwards around 14,000.
And on the YouTube and Telegram channel, are you posting under the name Raging Dissident?
Yes.
And I understand that you also have an Instagram account using the name Raging Dissident. Is that correct?
Yes, I do.
And are there any other social media that you use?
Those are the primary one. Rumble as well is another video sharing website. Primarily, those are the ones I use most heavily. I also have a personal page that I typically just use for advertising links and so on Facebook, Gab, and yeah, I believe that's it.
And what's the URL for that personal website?
My own personal .com website.
Yeah, the one you were just referencing.
Oh, I have just a Facebook page. There's a Rumble website and URL, but my personal website is ragingdissident.com.
Thank you. And do you use the messaging service Slack to communicate?
No.
Have you ever used Slack?
No, I've never heard of it.
In the letter to the Senate, you identify yourself as a founding member of the People's Party of Canada. Is that correct?
Yes. When the party was stood up, it required a certain amount of signatures to register federally. I believe maybe 250, 500, something in that range. Mr. Bernier put out a request for people that wanted to support his platform and see the party created to fill out a form and sign it and mail it into the appropriate address, which I did.
Right. And you describe yourself as an enthusiastic supporter of the party then?
I wouldn't go as far as enthusiastic, but I am a supporter, yes.
Okay, so if we could pull up the letter to the Senate again. JMK3. And if we could zoom in, please, and just give me a moment. If we can continue scrolling down. Continue scrolling down, please. Stop there. It says here in your letter, Mr. MacKenzie, I am also a founding member of the People's Party of Canada and enthusiastically supported the party through my social media. So would you at least agree with me that you enthusiastically support the People's Party of Canada through your social media? Oh, it appears we're having some technical difficulties, so if everyone could bear with us for a moment. So the technical team has said that it'll be 5 minutes to resolve the issue, Mr. Commissioner.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break and then come back.
The commission is in recess for 5 minutes. La commission est levée pour 5 minutes. The commission is reconvened. La commission reprend.
Mr. MacKenzie, can you hear me right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. And I can hear you, and apologies for the technical difficulty, and I appreciate your patience while we sort it out. Before we got cut off, and I'm not sure when you last heard me, I had asked you whether or not you were an enthusiastic supporter of the People's Party of Canada, and you suggested it wasn't necessarily enthusiastic. I had then pulled up the letter that you'd sent to the Senate, in which you say, and hopefully you can see it, that you're a founding member and you enthusiastically supported the party through my social media, public speaking, and attending events held by Maxime Bernier, as well as personal friends Mark Friesen and Randy Hilliard. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
And so I take it you agree with me that you were an enthusiastic supporter, at least to the extent you wrote that in the letter to the Senate.
Correct.
Yeah.
I misinterpreted the question. I thought you maybe perhaps meant at the current time. I haven't been really involved in any party politics since around this time. And as pertains to the letter, enthusiastically, I guess I was referring to throughout the previous federal election that had just transpired in the fall.
And on your, and you mentioned earlier that you are a podcaster. The commission also understands that these podcasts are often videotaped as well, and the video is streamed. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Okay. So it's not just an audio format when you talk about a podcast.
No, it's both. I usually extrapolate the audio and then upload it after to several streaming platforms for typical, more typical podcasting consumption.
Right. And on your podcasts, I take it would you agree that you're an outspoken about your criticism of the federal government?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you're also outspoken about your criticism of the RCMP?
Yes.
And you were, as a general matter, opposed to the COVID-19 public health mandates that were imposed by the federal government?
In general, yes.
And with respect to the RCMP, as I understand it, you've been critical of how they handled the mass casualty event in Portapique, Nova Scotia in 2020. Is that fair?
Yes, sir. Several days after that event had taken place, I reached out to some people that I knew in the area and tried to get a sense of, before I had just, started speaking haphazardly without really having any, as much information as I could. And then I released a video on YouTube, which garnered roughly anywhere between 500,000 to 1 million views across various platforms in the following week.
I'm now going to ask you some questions about Diagolon. Again, referring back to the letter you sent to the Senate, you explained to them that Diagolon is a fictional country. Is that at least that's how its origin? Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
Right. And from the material the commission's reviewed, Diagolon, the origin of it was something you drew on your phone when you drew a line over the continent of North America from the southeast to the northwest of the continent. Am I describing that correctly?
Yes. So the concept was born out of a sort of a long kind of stream of consciousness. I do a lot of analytical commentary on current events, politics, these kinds of things. At the time, I believe it was January 2021, I had observed, as many others had, the Midwestern United States, Texas, Florida, North, South Dakota, and so on, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Alaska, geographically formed sort of an oblique line that were resistant to or handling the COVID-19 approach in a different way. These were traditionally conservative areas in Canada, Republican in the United States. So we, kind of found it amusing that there was this kind of geographical divide almost that you could find on a map, and it became sort of a joke that if this was a pretend place, a different kind of parallel universe, a different world, and so on. And that's how the concept was born. The flag you're referencing is what I created in the weeks following on my phone, just as kind of as a mechanism for branding symbolism kind of thing for community members, and it started to become synonymous with myself and the podcast, kind of as I guess a branding mechanism that people would display, and they could buy patches, stickers, and things like this to basically to know that they're a fan of mine.
So, and I take it from reading your letter to the Senate and what you just said, you don't take any issue, and you agree that you are associated with Diagolon and the Diagolon flag?
Yes, it came out of my imaginations. Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And you talk about you mentioned there. I think you said it began as a bit of a joke, but as I understand it, that joke has now evolved into an international community of your podcast fans. Is that fair?
Yes, it's also fairly synonymous with another thing that's been referenced, the so-called Plaid Army, which was me and several other guys were just having a conversation one day. We all had similar shirts on. Someone made a joke about, what is this, the Plaid Army? So it was kind of, that evolved into this. It's essentially the same thing. It's the same group of people, and it's just again, a kind of a branding mechanism, a way for to unite community followers and so on.
Right, and you specifically reference in your letter to the Senate that it has created an international community of your podcast fans. Is that correct?
Yes, there are followers in fans in the United States, some in Europe, Australia.
And as I understand from your letter, that this community engages in regional meet and greets, barbecues, and family gatherings.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Sometime in the summer of 2021, I believe, we kind of hosted it. Just people wanted to come out and have kind of a meet and greet with myself and some other guys. And we had, as you said, a barbecue. I had some drinks. Some guys were playing guitars and so on. I observed that there was a few dozen people that came from as far away as British Columbia, Ontario. We met in Saskatchewan, and it struck me as in this time of a lot of people feeling very isolated and depressed, a lot of them expressed to me how much this meant for them to feel as though they had some kind of connection and kinship with other people that felt the same way as they did about the future, and shared their fears and concerns and so on. And I just observed how much it seemed to help them and heal them and make them happy. So I began what I called a Find Your Friends campaign. So I used using my online presence and my Telegram channel and so on, set up kind of regional areas or chat channels to facilitate not everyone can come all the way to Saskatchewan from PEI, Newfoundland, or so on. So if there's people that are like-minded, that are in your area, that share that are a fan of my podcast and so on, and you'd like to meet each other and share in this kind of this kind of activity, then you could do so this way. I was just trying to create an avenue for them to pursue, and I encourage people to do that rather than sitting at home looking at their screens and being fed fear and what I believe is a lot of toxic messaging on the media and television and so on. And I thought it would be good for people to get out and have real face-to-face human interactions and relationships again. And I thought it would be beneficial to their mental health. And I saw nothing but good things coming from that. So I encourage people to do so.
Okay, and you mentioned a first or an initial barbecue in either the summer 2020, 2021. After that, have you attended personally any of these other meet and greets that you encourage people to participate in?
There was one other one in Saskatchewan that I was present. There was another party sort of barbecue in Ontario in perhaps April of this year, and there was another gathering outside the city of Ottawa during the convoy period of time in February.
And are there other former Canadian Forces members in the Diagolon community?
Yes, there are. I've often incorporated a lot of my commentary, my unique, I suppose you could say, kind of lived experiences through the military, how I deal with my the inherent trauma and so on that comes with that. It has attracted a fair amount of other veterans and military personnel because they resonate with the things that I'm saying. I'm speaking to something that they can understand or identify with. So there is a fair number. I couldn't hazard a number specifically, but a sizable portion of the community, especially early on, where other guys that knew me from work or so on that kind of spread through the areas because I'm an outspoken veteran and so on.
Do members of the Diagolon community ever refer to themselves as bigots?
Yes, they do. This was my doing to try and kind of take power out of the word as it was being used as a slur, as a slanderous kind of defamatory method towards people like me and my followers and fans and so on. So we just kind of adopted as a tongue-in-cheek kind of defiant way of shrugging it off, is because it doesn't bother us that these people are, I show that it doesn't bother me, it shouldn't bother them, and they shouldn't care what these people think. They shouldn't allow them to attack them in this way and get under their skin and make them feel bad just because they are who they are and they like what they like.
So you and your followers were being called bigots. It didn't bother you, and so as a way to show it didn't bother you, you embraced it and identify yourself now as bigots.
In a tongue-in-cheek kind of sarcastic tone, yes.
And is that sort of tongue-in-cheek, sarcastic tone consistent with the sort of comedy that you perform on your podcasts?
I would say that, yes, I'm a fairly sarcastic person, yes.
And you already mentioned the Diagolon symbol or flag, and I'm going to pull it up just to confirm everyone can see what we're talking about. If we can pull up COM 906. And again, Mr. MacKenzie, at any time, if you can't see anything that I've put up on the screen, just let me know. So is that you in this photograph that's on the screen?
Yes, it is. This was at one of the gatherings, I believe, outside of Ottawa, sometime in February. I believe this is a still image from a video that was taken. I was standing on top of a table addressing the people that had arrived and attended, and was just simply thanking them for showing up and encouraging them to keep taking care of each other, and hope they have a good time and so on.
And fair to say that the flag in the background, that's a Diagolon flag?
Yes.
And the commission understands that on February 15th, 2022, you said in a video that you could not wait until that flag is seen as is described as a hate symbol. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, sir. Again, I was being kind of tongue-in-cheek in a way, because the people that I believe are deciding what is and what is not as a hate symbol are incredibly disingenuous and kind of smear merchants. It would have been kind of a gotcha trophy over them, not as actually in a serious manner displayed as a hate symbol, but more of a achievement that I kind of lured them in more to focus on myself.
And do you see, and I take it then that this is another sort of part of your comedy, wanting this to be called a hate symbol?
Yes, it's because it's, again, no one in my community would be surprised to hear me say these things, and it certainly isn't a symbol of hatred, but we find it amusing that our I guess, enemies, if you could say, do believe this and believe these absurd claims about us, and it's just kind of an inside joke at this point.
You sell Diagolon merchandise, is that right?
I personally, I have a shop that has just recently gone online in the past 2 or 3 months. Previously, other friends of mine offered, like the flags, for example. Another man was selling patches. He was making it cost just to help promote community visibility and give people something to. I thought it'd be nice for some people to have something to hold in their hand and kind of have them bring them some attachment and just something for them to enjoy and display.
So the people who were selling the merchandise, they were friends of yours?
Yes.
They sold it with your approval?
Yes, they did.
And they are also part of the Diagolon community?
They would likely identify as fans of mine, and yes. Okay. However, as you can probably observe, it's not a particularly complicated thing to produce. So it's not a copyrighted symbol by any means. There's no real official ownership to it as of yet. So people would just approach me of their own voluntary intention and ask, like, hey, do you mind if I make this or make that and sell this, for whatever? And I would say, go ahead. If it gives you something to do, if you can make a few dollars from it and it helps you, then by all means.
Right. It's not a nuanced symbol, is it, in terms of its design?
No, it's essentially just a black square, and I use my finger on my phone to do this about 3 times with a white paint marker selection. And as you can see, it's kind of an irregular. It's not perfectly straight lines. They're kind of irregular, and it is literally just my finger doing this a couple of times. And I sent that image file off to be produced from there.
So if someone wanted to show themselves as someone who supported your podcast or supported the Diagolon community, it'd be fairly easy for them to replicate the Diagolon flag. Is that fair?
I would assume so. Yes, it's not difficult to. It looks fairly simple.
So, Mr. MacKenzie, I think what I'm about to say will not come as a surprise to you, but in fairness, I want to ask you some questions about it.
Of course.
The RCMP has described you in documents the commission has received. Sorry, let me back. The RCMP has described Diagolon, let me be specific, has described Diagolon as a militia-like network with members that are armed and preparing for violence. The RCMP has also described Diagolon as having supporters that express sentiments akin to accelerationism, viewing a coming collapse or civil war as necessary to right the course of the country. In your letter to the Senate, you denied those sorts of allegations. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And in the letter to the Senate, you said that you are under RCMP scrutiny because of the criticisms that you've made about the RCMP. And as I understand reading your letter, but please correct me if I'm wrong, I understand you to be saying that the RCMP sort of is looking at you closely because of the way you criticize them, and that's why they're saying these sorts of things about you.
That is my personal belief. Yes, there is a many of the followers and fans and so on are you could say conservative Canadians. There is an aspect of firearms, sporting, recreational culture stuff, especially in Western Canada, but there's certainly not anything resembling a militia or anything to this extent.
Moving away from what the RCMP says about Diagolon, I appreciate you wouldn't have been able to watch the testimony, but we had Superintendent Patrick Morris, who is the head of the OPP's Intelligence Bureau, testify. He's not a member of the RCMP, and he testified at the inquiry that Diagolon is an extremist entity that holds extremist views. I assume you also disagree with that statement.
Yes, sir. It's my, again, belief and assertion that much of this this narrative is coming from certain actors and members of the media. The Canadian Anti-Hate Network and so on has astroturfed and kind of laid the foundation of this idea. They've been certainly paid me a lot of attention over the past few years, and through personal disclosure documents of mine, through various legal proceedings, it's been revealed that the police are actually relying upon articles, if you can call them that, by the Canadian Anti-Hate Network as open source intelligence. So they're relying upon what these people are saying about me as taking it at face value.
But to be fair, Mr. MacKenzie, you don't know what the RCMP or the OPP are relying on in their entirety when they make these assessments, do you?
Correct.
I was going to ask you about 2 terms, one of which was the Plaid Army, but thank you, you've already explained that, so we can save that question. The next term that we've seen a reference to is a term that you've used sometimes called the beach. And it is our understanding, but again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that sometimes when you reference the beach, you're referencing D-Day in World War II. Is that accurate?
Yes, it comes from a line in a movie I enjoy, Saving Private Ryan. There's a line in that film right before the landing craft descend upon Omaha Beach, I believe, where Tom Hanks's character says, "I'll see you on the beach," as kind of a reassuring, I will be there with you kind of sentiment. So I say this is, again, kind of, and my followers are familiar with this. I've explained it several times, but that's just kind of a callback to that film and to expressing a sentiment that whatever is transpiring in the future I will be there with you to support you, and you guys can support each other and so on. It's just a message of encouragement, I suppose.
You attended the protests in Ottawa in January and February 2022?
Yes, sir.
And you attended them with other members of the Diagolon community?
Yes, I did.
When did you arrive in Ottawa?
I can't be certain of the exact date, but it was 1 or perhaps 2 days before the main body of the trucks arrived. I believe it was a Friday evening they showed up. So maybe perhaps that Thursday or Wednesday.
So you knew the convoy was coming to Ottawa, and that's why you showed up?
Yes, I did. I observed it was very clear to me by monitoring social media and so on as part of what I do to comment on social, current events and, analyze political commentary, that kind of thing, that this was going to be a very significant event. It was very clear to me this was not going to be a in and out, weekend protest type of thing. There was videos of very long convoys of trucks and vehicles. They were coming in from multiple directions. There were open group chats or voice chats and stuff where these people were communicating back and forth. You could listen in on it. It was clear it was going to be a pretty big deal. So again, this was going to be something I would be talking about and would have a lot of my attention anyway. So I decided why not go and get a close look at it as it transpired rather than watch it from, relying on other sources from home to understand what was happening.
Right, and it attracted your attention because the stated purpose of the truckers coming to Ottawa was to end the federal COVID-19 mandates, and that's a political view you also held, right?
That seemed to be one of their primary motivations, yes. There was a lot of that was one of the main factors. There was a lot of other discontent in various groups. It wasn't a monolithic, that was the only objective for people. Again, there was not really any hierarchy or any real organization that I could observe. It very much seemed like just a grassroots kind of movement of discontent with the federal government, with things that have been transpiring. The cost of living is rising, social division, just a lot of the rhetoric officials and stuff are using on television. A lot of people were very unhappy and having a difficult time over the past couple of years. And it basically, I would describe it as, if I could use a metaphor, the pot had just simply boiled over. And many people had decided that this was going to be the time that they were going to show up and exercise their right to peacefully demonstrate their discontent and their displeasure with the performance of the federal government.
And when you arrived in Ottawa, you met people there who were members of the Diagolon community?
Yes, sir.
And presumably, if you met someone who hadn't heard of you or hadn't heard of Diagolon, you would tell them about it, and you'd tell them about your podcasts and encourage them to listen and support?
Yes, if someone was unfamiliar or they asked a question, I would just simply say, "Hi, I'm a social media guy. I'm online. I have a podcast. It's political commentary, comedy, and some analysis and this kind of thing. If you're interested, I have business cards that someone had made up for me. I would hand them out to people and say, hey, "This is the website if you'd like to check it out," and so on, and have a nice day, kind of thing.
And those business cards, they would have had the Diagolon logo on them?
Yes, on one side.
Did those, sorry, it might have cut out. I asked you, did the business cards have the Diagolon logo on them?
Yeah, yes, they did. They have it on one side, and then one of my other artistic logos on the other side, with just simply the website on one side, and then I think it says "Find the others" or "Find your friends" on the other.
And you suggested this is something you do if someone came up to you, but is it fair to say, Mr. MacKenzie, you're in the media business and you want to promote your media, so you would also actively hand out those cards?
Yes, sir. If someone asks or they're interested or they express a desire to learn like what it is I'm doing, it's just easier to just give them this. It directs them to the website. All of my social media links and so on are there. There's a short video. They can go from there. If they like what they see, I presume they'll continue. If not, then so be it.
Did you attend at any point in the protest with a person named Alex Vriend or Vrend? Apologies if I'm mispronouncing the name.
Yes, sir.
And who is Alex Vriend?
He is someone I met online through the evolution of my podcast, I suppose. I met Alex in person in the summer of 2021, I believe. We spent some time together in Saskatchewan as he was traveling around the country, meeting people. And as I understood it, he was just kind of in between, jobs in life and wasn't really sure what he was just taking an opportunity to He bought a van and a dog and just kind of went on the classic Canadian road trip around the country and was meeting up with other people in the community that expressed a desire to, meet them and hang out. And he'd become kind of more of a prominent person because of his, he also is a content creator. He makes a lot of memes and jokes and comedic things like this. And so people were interested to meet him.
And his content, he posts under the name Ferryman's Toll, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And we understand both from your letter to the Senate and some videos that your council has submitted that when you were in Ottawa, you encouraged peaceful protesting. Is that fair?
Yes, sir. I was concerned, especially because of the rhetoric and verbiage coming out of, again, the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, which was being parroted. It's starting to be picked up by other more credible news outlets and so on, that I was concerned that if something should happen outside my control or I can't really see the future, but I wanted to state very clearly what my intentions were and what I expected of people if they were going to be representing myself or brandishing any of my, I encourage them not to, because I wanted this to be about Canada, that this is about the country. Bring a Canadian flag. This isn't about me. This isn't about, I'm not trying to sell anything. This is more important. The bigger idea is more important. But if you do, happen to have, something, please conduct yourself, appropriately, because your actions and decisions and things you say and you do will reflect upon me and the greater community and so on. So,
just
I wanted to have that on the record before, just in case.
So just to stop there. So you wanted someone who was wearing a diagolon symbol to act accordingly. It's not accordingly, but act as appropriately and peacefully. At this point in time, were you aware that either the RCMP or other police agencies would maybe monitoring what you do or what your supporters do?
Yes, sir.
So when you're giving that direction, you're aware that the authorities are watching.
I was never explicitly given any notice or no one had talked to me or spoken to anything, but it was pretty clear just upon general observations, my own instincts, that we were probably on the radar somewhere. So I didn't want anything to be misconstrued. I was trying to be very clear about my intentions and, jokes aside, this is about, protesting the government's performance and people exercising their rights to do so. I didn't want this to be misconstrued in any way. We were simply there to protest peacefully. I said things like, if there's a speed limit on walking for some reason, then you will walk slower than that. Don't even litter, don't spit, don't even throw a snowball. Don't give anyone any excuse to point at you and say that, look what you've done, look what you've, incited or created or fomented and so on. Because that would have undermined the entire purpose of everything everyone was trying to achieve.
So, Mr. MacKenzie, I'm now going to read you one by one a list of names, and I may have some follow-up questions, but all I want to know right now is for each name whether or not you communicated with this individual while you were in, either before you arrived in Ottawa or while you were in Ottawa. Okay? You understand? Tamara Leach.
No, I first spoke to Tamara Leach potentially in July of this year, August.
Okay. Chris Barber.
Not before. No.
James Bowder.
No.
Bridget Belton.
No.
Benjamin Dichter.
I'm aware of who Mr. Dichter is. I personally have not had any interaction with him. I was aware that he was some kind of alleged manager of YouTube channels for where he would set up GoFundMe's and name himself as a beneficiary.
And Mr. MacKenzie, I don't mean to interrupt, and it's just I want to make sure we get through it, and you have time, and I just want to know right now whether you communicated with these people. Your counsel will have an opportunity if there's other things that you want to bring up.
Yep.
Did you ever communicate either before or while you were in Ottawa with a Tom Marazzo?
Yes, I spoke to Mr. Marazzo once, possibly twice over the phone. Once as I was driving back from Ottawa to the Maritimes to drop off some people that had accompanied me. They could only stay for a couple of days and have families and kids and so on. So I spoke to him for a couple of hours. We talked about our shared experiences in the military and so on. He indicated to me that he was in some capacity nearby, something resembling people that were making decisions, I guess. and basically just kind of connected in that, like, someone suggested we should meet each other, and I expressed to him that if there was anything that I could do to help assist, get a message out or something, that I was willing to do that. No one ever asked me to. And likewise, I told him if I saw or was made aware of anything that I felt that would be relevant, that they should know about, that I would inform him and so on. But I think that was the extent of our interaction. I didn't have any real meaningful interaction with Mr. Marazzo, I think, until around April, when there was a benefit, a fundraising dinner for the Veterans for Freedom organization in Burlington.
In Ottawa, how many times did you speak with Mr. Marazzo?
At least once, possibly twice.
And when was the first time you spoke with Mr. Marazzo?
It would have been sometime during the first week, I believe, of when the trucks arrived. I was in the process. I remember I was driving my truck and it was over the headset. The other guys were sleeping in the truck while we were talking. So somewhere in between Quebec and New Brunswick, I couldn't say.
So sometime before January 28th?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure of the dates of when the trucks arrived and when they left.
But sorry, and there's evidence of when the trucks arrived, but it was some point before the trucks arrived. Is that correct?
No, it was after.
It was after. How long after?
I would say roughly a week.
Roughly a week.
7 to 5 to 8 days, perhaps.
Fair enough. When you were in Ottawa, did you communicate directly with any Ottawa police or OPP?
Not to my knowledge. I did have some friendly conversations on the street, just, hi, how are you? How's it going? You cold out? That kind of thing, but nothing significant.
Did you receive from any, did you receive from any sources information about police operations or police enforcement plans while you were in Ottawa?
Yes. There was a user that contacted me, I believe on Telegram, I would say, again, summer of 2021, who self-identified himself as a RCMP member, just kind of friendly, expressed to enjoy the podcast and like what I was saying and so on. So there was a loose relationship with whoever this person was. And during that time in Ottawa, they had reached out to me to inform me of, to say that the POU, which I had to find, if that was, I didn't understand the nomenclature. I've never been a police officer. I understood it to be the public order unit, essentially the riot police, were being activated to be sent to Ottawa. And further to that, after the Emergency Act had been invoked, this person had sent me, there were screenshots, I guess, of either a WhatsApp group chat or a Telegram, I'm not sure, of various RCMP officers engaging in taking selfies of drinking and eating and so on, and celebrating the violence that they were bringing upon the people downtown, and saying, wait until they hear our jackboots and this kinds of thing. He sent that to me, and I said, well, is this real? And they assured me, yes, it looked very real. And I said, oh, I will publish this. And they said, that's why we sent it to you. So I did. I released that on Telegram, and that it went out. Since then, that person has deleted their account sometime in March, and I haven't been in contact with them since.
Okay. Do you remember their name on Telegram?
The user handle was like GK or PK or something. It was 2 initials and a phone number. I think it was an Ontario area code, but beyond that, I didn't.
Other than that user, did anyone else provide you with information about police operations or enforcement plans?
No.
If we could pull up OPP 1668. And then if we could go to page 5, please. Scroll down more. So this is an OPP intelligence brief, Mr. MacKenzie. You may have seen it with respect to some of the disclosure we provided, but I assume you wouldn't have seen the document before today. I'm going to ask you, if you look at item 2, it says, actually for context, look at item 1. It talks about a video posted to, the name is redacted, but it says the name of the Instagram account and it says Raging Dissident. So that would be you, Mr. MacKenzie?
Yes, sir.
As far as you know. And then item 2, again, talks about a video posted to the Raging Dissident account in which the poster shares information credited to police sources that disclose enforcement plans, and then it provides a bit of a description. Is that the information that the user on Telegram provided you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. On the same on the same page, if you look at item 3, it talks about on February 8th, a user posted 2 videos to his Telegram channel, Rage Board. Is that your Telegram channel?
That was one of the previous names of it, yes.
Okay. And if you look there, there's a line break, and then it says, again, name redacted, says there's supposed to be some negotiations taking place with a government delegate, but he hasn't heard how it went from organizers yet, he goes on to state. Do you see that?
No, sir.
Sorry, I'm talking a little quickly.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, I caught up.
And take your time. I want to make sure that you're reading this before I ask you questions. So this suggests that you were aware that there might be negotiations with a government delegate, but you hadn't heard from the organizers yet. Do you know what that's a reference to?
I can't recall. I remember being under the impression that there was some form of negotiations taking place between some sort of leadership apparatus for the convoy and the perhaps city of Ottawa, RCMP, OPP, not sure, the police and the convoy people.
Fair enough. How did you learn that information?
That is a good question. I think it may have just been kind of common knowledge that there was something like that was taking place. More of a rumor, perhaps. As it goes on, the public order unit. That was given to me specifically by this user on Telegram from the RCMP. Allegedly they were.
Right, and you're talking then about the part that's in bold after that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Are you aware that Tom Marazzo met with City Manager Steve Kanellakis on February 8th, 2022?
No, sir.
Did Mr. Marazzo ever talk to you about meeting with Mr. Kanellakis or meeting with any government officials in any of the conversations you had?
No, he did not.
Okay. Have you ever spoken with Keith Wilson or Eva Chipiak?
No, sir.
We can take that down. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Mr. MacKenzie, I think you agree with me. It's fair to say that you were critical of the federal government's response to the protests in Ottawa and Coutts. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Initially, it was. I had no issue. Actually, I thought it was handled very appropriately. There was a strong police presence, but also there was a large number of people. So inherently, there is a danger that there's going to be, something can happen. So it made sense. I didn't take any issue with anything that they had seen until they started becoming a little more aggressive here and there. There was an incident where some fuel cans were stolen or seized or what have you. But it wasn't really until the EMA was invoked that they became extremely aggressive and violent. And that was what I took the most issue with.
Did you ever say that the RCMP was intentionally cutting truckers off from essential supplies in Ottawa and Coutts?
That is what I had been hearing from people, yes.
And did you then repeat that on your podcast?
I may have, yes.
Did you ever say that the RCMP attempt to disrupt cell phone towers to ensure truckers cannot communicate?
That again was another scenario. There were people having a lot of issues with their cell phones. That may or may not have been the conduct of some kind of interference. It could have just been too many cell phones, not enough towers. I'm not sure, but that again was another kind of running suspicion in theory at the time.
Fair enough. My question right now is if you recall, if that's something you said on your podcast, that was something that was being said.
I may have, yeah.
And did you ever say on your podcast let me back up. did you ever distribute or know of anyone distributing contact information about the members of the Ottawa Police Service?
Not to my knowledge, no.
If we can pull up ssm.nsc.0001575_REL.0001. Apologies for all those digits, Mr. MacKenzie. So scroll up to the top, please, just so I can give the witness some context. So, Mr. MacKenzie, this is a CSIS analytical brief dated February 21st, 2022. And if we could go to page 3 of the brief, please. And scroll down a bit further, please. Scroll down a little bit further, please. So this part of the brief says that since the initial weekend, key figures within Diagolon have made appeals for participation in and documentation of the demonstrations. Further, Vreend has been collecting donations to allow others to travel to participate in demonstration in Coutts, Alberta, or Ottawa, Ontario. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any knowledge about whether or not Mr. Vreend was collecting donations to allow people to participate in both Coutts and Ottawa?
I recall he was collecting some funds for someone. I don't think it was just in general open to whoever wanted them. I think there was 1 or 2 people potentially from Western Canada that expressed a desire to come down to Ottawa, but they couldn't afford it. So I think that was roughly what was going on there. I wasn't directly involved. I can't recall entirely, but I think that's what was going on.
And then if we could scroll up in this document to the next page up. Sorry, keep scrolling up. Stop there. So this, again, this is a CSIS a document, but it has a box here that says, in Jeremy MacKenzie's own words, it's the first one says, this is the good guys versus the bad guys. The showdown has finally fucking begun, and it has begun in Canada. You could go be a part of the story now. Is that something you've said?
It sounds like something I said, yes.
And is that something you've said with respect to the protests in either Ottawa or Coutts?
Probably, I believe so, yes.
And then the next quote is, this is the beach, get yourself out there. Is that something you said with respect to the protests in either Ottawa or Coutts?
Probably, yes.
Okay. And in this case, when you're using the beach, are you referring to the analogy we spoke about with D-Day?
I was referring to the idea that this, again, a lot of people had felt very powerless and disenfranchised, upset, depressed, and this was an opportunity for them to actually go and participate and have their voices be heard and join these demonstrations. And rather than sitting at home complaining and whining about it on the couch, they could, if you can, why not? Why not go and be involved?
And I've heard you say that, Mr. MacKenzie. I'm asking you if in this case, when you're using the word beach, it's using in the same context when you're alluding to D-Day. And the reason I'm asking you this is that the police and the government view your group as potentially as extremist. And so this is the sort of thing that would grab their interest. So when you're talking about beach, you're talking about D-Day, is that right?
I was trying to speak directly to my audience that are familiar with my verbiage, my kind of terminology and things I reference in the way that they would understand that this is something important that, we should, you can do together. It's not, I certainly didn't mean it in any kind of violent context or D-Day invasion type scenario. I just simply meant it as an encouraging kind of call to the community at large that, hey, if this is something, you could be involved in rather than just, again, sitting at home by yourself.
So, Mr. Clerk, you can take that document down. Thank you. I now have some questions for you, Mr. MacKenzie, about the protests in Coutts. Just first, simple yes or no, did you ever travel to Coutts personally?
No.
Did you know anyone who was protesting in Coutts in February 2022?
I was aware that Mr. Chris Lysak was there, and I am loosely acquainted with Mr. Adam Skelly, who had made a couple of trips there to deliver steaks and brisket and so on. There's a couple of comedians in the Edmonton and Calgary area that I know that travel down to put on some a performance, I think, and then just kind of meet and greet and leave, and that was about it.
What were the names of the two comedians?
It was Brendan Blackier and Sam Walker, or maybe, I'm not sure if Sam attended, but Brendan for sure. And there was also Brett Forte, who I don't know personally. I've never spoken to him. I was just made aware that they were there because they posted a video of them traveling there to say hi to everybody.
And so Chris Lysak, Mr. Adam Skelly, Brendan and Sam, are they members of the Diagolon community?
No. They may identify as fans. Mr. Lysak would. Brendan probably would. Sam potentially. Mr. Forte I've never met or spoken to.
If you're a fan of Diagolon, you're part of the community, right?
Again, it's just kind of a self-identifying. You could say it's as simple as, as identifying as a Toronto Maple Leafs fan by putting a sticker on your truck. It's really that simple.
So the answer to my question is yes.
I suppose so, yes.
Were you communicating with the individuals you just identified while they were in Coots?
No.
How do you know Chris Lysak?
Mr. Lysak has been a longtime fan of the podcast. I met him personally in Saskatchewan in the summer of 2021, I believe, that first meet and greet get together I mentioned, and a subsequent one later in the year, perhaps September. There was a few dozen people. We, had a beer, ate a steak, with all these people, took a photograph together at one of them, and that's pretty much it.
Did you talk to him when you were at either of those two meet and greets?
Yes, I talked to dozens of people, yeah.
Yeah.
Chris was one of them.
And I take it the topic of conversation at these meet and greets include the similar topics that you discuss on your podcast. Is that fair?
I generally don't like to engage in that. I find it kind of exhausting, and I try to just keep it kind of a social, meet and greet, casual kind of social event. I don't really try to talk politics or anything like that.
But presumably your fans, when they meet you in person, they want to talk to you about what they hear you talking about in your podcast. That's fair, isn't it?
Sometimes, yes.
Yeah. Can we pull up COM 50907? So, Mr. MacKenzie, can you please identify the people in this photo?
Yep, that's the photo I just mentioned. I posted it to my Instagram page. It's myself on my left and Mr. Lysak on the right.
Right, and was this at the first event in Saskatchewan?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And just to be clear, Mr. MacKenzie, other than that event in Saskatchewan and then the other event in September 2021, is there any other times you've met with Mr. Lysak?
No.
Did you communicate with him at any time other than at those events?
Mr. Lysak may have been in some larger online group chats where there's 30, 40 other people involved. Never, to my knowledge, never directly one-on-one. He has called me twice, I think, since he's been incarcerated, just simply to say hi, and I just try to offer some encouragement to him and hope that he's doing well, etc.
So you spoke to him after his arrest in Coots?
Yes, sometime this summer.
Okay. And I asked you generally about the people you identified who you knew in Coots, but with respect to Mr. Lysak specifically, did you understand him to be a fan of your podcasts?
Yes, sir.
And you understood him to be a member of the Diagolon community?
Yes.
Are you aware that Mr. Lysak, or at least there's been reports that Mr. Lysak had a Diagolon flag flying outside the house in which he lived with his father?
I have heard that, yes.
Yeah. So if we could pull up COM 917. And so, have you ever read this article that's on the screen, Mr. MacKenzie?
I may have. It's tough to recall.
It's an article in the Toronto Star, and you're quoted in it. Do you remember giving a quote to the Toronto Star with respect to an article they were writing about Mr. Lysak?
I think so. I've spoken to the Toronto Star several times, yes.
Okay. And if you could go down to page 3, just so I can show you, you'll see in the middle of the page, it says, when reached by the Star this week, MacKenzie said in an email that he'd met Chris along with thousands of people by now through my podcast and travels around the country, which is, as you explained. So we can take that down. Mr. MacKenzie, are you aware that on February 14th, the RCMP executed a search warrant in Coutts, Alberta, and arrested 13 people? And as a part of that arrest, they seized several weapons and body armor. Is that something you're aware of?
Yes, sir.
And how did you become aware of that?
I was made aware of it by once it hit the media either that evening or the following day.
And when did you become aware that Mr. Lysak was one of the people who was arrested?
It was right around the same time that word had spread around the community that he had been arrested was as part of the 13 or however many other people were arrested.
And are you aware that Mr. Lysak was charged with conspiracy to murder, uttering threats, and possession of a weapon?
Yes, sir.
After the arrests, as the commission understands it, you posted a video in Ottawa where you talked about the people who'd gotten arrested in Coutts. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, sir, I think so.
What I'll do is I'll pull it up. I'm not going to play it for you because of our time, but if you can identify it as a video that you participated in, that would be helpful. COM 50911. Actually, we might just play the first maybe 30 seconds or so.
Play and type if you're not, if you just want to give a shit. Please, in your thoughts, keep the boys in Alberta. They got arrested. We haven't heard from them. We don't know what's going on. There's some rumors they're getting fucking charged with some heavy shit. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know. I know as much as you do, but I
Okay,
know
you
they're
can
not
stop
bad.
it there. So is that a video you posted, Mr. MacKenzie?
Yes, that appears to be a clip from one of my podcast episodes, probably shortly after that had taken place. At the time, and still presently, I'm very skeptical of law enforcement, especially considering the political nature in which there appears to be a lot of interference going on in the country. I was concerned that from that aspect of what was happening out there. Again, I don't know anything other than what's been posted in the media and what's been said, other than that they've been charged with what they've been charged with. Of course, if evidence does appear or is presented that proves that these allegations are in fact correct, obviously that is something I would denounce. I don't stand by that. As I've said, this is not something that is supported by myself. It would undermine the entire purpose of these protests. And until then, I hope they get a fair trial, and we'll see what happens.
And you're correct, Mr. MacKenzie. The matter is before the courts, and so it is yet to be adjudicated in the appropriate setting. The media reports are that the people were arrested. There was concern by the police that some of them were intending to use the weapons to harm police officers or murder police officers. Again, that is going to be dealt with in another matter, but I assume if that was someone's intent, you would denounce it. Is that did I hear that correctly?
Absolutely, yes.
In the video, you can take it down. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. You mentioned the boys in Alberta when you're talking about the rest. Other than Mr. Lysak, do you know anyone else who got arrested in Alberta?
No, sir.
I'm just to be clear, I'm going to read you the names, and I just want you to say yes or no. Yes, I know them. No, I don't know them. Ursula Gwen Allred,
No.
Luke Burke,
No.
Christopher Dean Carbert or Carbert,
No.
Evan Banning Colnut,
No.
Johnson Chi Chow Law,
No.
Jacqueline Francis Martin,
Miss Martin, I did have a conversation with maybe in June or July. I think she was in one of these video chats and introduced herself and mentioned that she was, or maybe that wasn't her. Martin?
and Mr. McKenzie, just to stop you there, I'm interested in people you knew as
At
of,
the time?
as of February 14th,
Yes.
2022.
Okay. Yeah, no.
Justin Lyle Martin,
No.
Jerry Mitchell Troy Morin,
No.
Easton Stewart Oler,
No.
Anthony George Olyanek,
No.
Joanne Lynn Person,
No.
Jenks Anthon Zaremba.
No.
Mr. Commissioner, I'm almost done. If I could have a few more minutes, please.
Okay.
Mr. McKenzie, I'm sure you are no doubt aware that the RCMP released photos of the weapons and body armor they seized. And why don't we pull up two photos first with COM 915. And if we could just scroll out, and this is just to give you some context, Mr. McKenzie, this is the larger photo showing the weapons and the ammunition and the vests that were seized. And then if we could pull up COM 916, and what I'm going to show you is a photo that's zooming in on the vest that if you're looking at the photos to the right. I expect you know what I'm going to show you at this point, Mr. McKenzie. So
Yes, sir.
this is a zoom in of the photo we're looking at, and that's one of the pieces of, that's a ballistic vest as I understand it. Is that correct?
It appears to be some kind of tactical vest. If it was ballistic, it would have to have some kind of ballistic plates or Kevlar or something inserted into it. It's not clear.
Right, fair enough. You see on there's two patches with the diagonal symbol, correct?
Yes, it does appear that that is the case. However, I was made aware of this shortly after this took place. And after some scrutiny and taking a closer look at the photos, they don't appear to be, as I said, there was a man in Prince Edward Island who was making these and selling them at cost to whoever. Thousands of these went out across Canada, some to the United States, some to Australia. These ones, however, appear to be homemade or made by someone else. As of now, I don't recall anyone coming forward to say that they had produced these or where these came from. So I can't really speak to it as their origins.
Right, but you agreed with me earlier, Mr. McKenzie, that any one of your fans or anyone who was in the Diagolon community who supported you could very easily made a patch that looks just like that. Isn't that right? If
Yes.
we could pull up, and this will be the last document, Mr. Commissioner, pb.nsc.can.0008508 underscore rel.0001. So, Mr. McKenzie, again, this is a document. This one's from the RCMP K Division, and it's a form of report about the arrests that we've been talking about in Coutts, Alberta. And if we could scroll down to where it says current situation, it says in the second bullet point, a ballistic vest was seized during the search warrant at the residence in Coutts, which contained a patch reflective of the Diagolon flag. It is believed that this vest belongs to one of the accused, Christopher Lysak. Open source information has linked Lysak to redacted name. So, Mr. McKenzie, this isn't your report. I know you didn't produce it, but you would agree with me that from the RCMP's perspective, they believe that the vest with the Diagolon symbol was Mr. Lysak's, correct?
That does appear to be what they believe, yes.
Yes, wait a moment.
Sorry, your counsel had an objection, so.
Yes.
It's unfair to this witness to ask him to speculate what is in the RCMP's mind and their perspective about intelligence.
I think maybe the question wasn't that well framed, but the quote speaks for itself. He could ask whether he agrees with the quote is on the RCMP letterhead. I mean, it's really not much further than that, I take it.
No, I actually withdraw the question, Mr. Commissioner. I agree that he has no he doesn't know why the RCMP made their observation. So I agree with that, and I withdraw it. And those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay. So now we'll go with first the convoy organizers.
The convoy organizers are ceding their time to Mr. MacKenzie's counsel, sir.
Okay. Government of Canada.
Good afternoon, Mr. MacKenzie. My name is Stephen Aylward. I'm one of the lawyers for the Government of Canada.
Hello?
Mr. MacKenzie, you described Diagolon as a grassroots community. Do I have that right?
No, I wouldn't say it's grassroots. It's sprang from my imagination, and I create the content from which the lore and amusement and entertainment and so on attracts people to it, in which they will then either self-identify as a fan or not.
Okay, and you've described yourself as the de facto leader of Diagolon?
No, that's not correct. I've never described myself in that manner. That's been put forward into the media again by people at the Canadian Anti-Hate Network. Again, this is a figment of my imagination in a fictional world.
I see. So
Can't really lead a fictional world exactly.
the letter to the Senate that Commission Counsel brought up earlier, you had described yourself as a de facto leader in quotes. I take it then you're saying that was being used ironically in that context.
Yes, I was trying to identify myself as the person in question that the Senate was debating about, and the House of Commons were talking about, which alarmed me. And I was acting in the interest of protecting not only myself, but other people that identified as fans and followers of mine. And it was clear that this was an issue of national importance, and I felt obliged to say something about it rather than ignore it.
Right. And you have no formal authority over anyone who's part of the Diagolon community, is that right?
That's correct. There's no hierarchy. There is no rank system, membership, code of conduct, uniforms, anything like this. It's a very informal, again, I would pose it as if you're a fan of the Calgary Flames or Montreal Canadiens or not or something. It's just as simple as saying you like it or you don't.
Okay, and you view yourself as somewhat of a calming presence within the Diagolon community?
No, I would view myself as the I guess, central figure from which the rest of it sort of orbits.
Okay, earlier you agreed with Commission Counsel that you had put out messages urging people in Ottawa not to use violence or to act unlawfully. You agree with that?
Correct. I do use my platform to try my best to, again, put forward messages and
that's
I guess responsible messaging, yes.
And you're putting out those messages because you were concerned that some members of the Diagolon community would use violence or would act unlawfully.
My concern was that something could happen outside of my control, and I would rather have had say something on record of what I would expect people to, to behave lawfully and peacefully, so that if they follow me and listen to me and they've heard that and then chosen to act on their own and do something something outside the desires of myself, then that's not really something I can control. I can't control what other people want to do, but I did want to make it clear that this was my intention, was a peaceful demonstration.
And you explained that there were other members of the Diagolon community with you in Ottawa at the time of the Freedom Convoy?
That's correct.
How many, would you say?
There was a property that we were staying at outside the city limits that had been offered up by someone who was a fan. He had a vacant building, no furniture, but it's got a roof, it's got heat, so you could stay there. At times there were 3, 4, or 5 of us, other times as many as 20.
And were there other people that you saw in Ottawa with Diagolon symbols who weren't part of that group?
I didn't personally observe any, one individual I did see that had a flag, but outside of that, I didn't see any symbolism or flags or patches or so on. I did encounter a number of people that recognized me and wanted to have a picture and talk and shake hands and so on.
Could we please call up ssm.nsc.can.6079 _rel.0001? Mr. MacKenzie, are you aware of reports that members of the Plaid Army put out a YouTube video in which they expressed the hope that the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa would be the Canadian version of the January 6th riot in Capitol Hill?
I believe I know the clip that you're referring to, which is again taken out of context of a much larger presentation broadcast of which I was not party to. Obviously, I can't speak to that person's intentions or what they meant by that, but I will reinforce that, it was not my intention to see any kind of violence, political violence, or anything like that, because it, again, undermines the intentions and objectives of the protesters, which was to peacefully demonstrate their discontent.
Thank you. If we could actually pull up the next documents, a video, pb.can.401820 _rel.0001. And if we could start the video at the 55-second mark, please. Just while we're calling that up, you're aware that there was a deal that was struck between some of the protest organizers in Ottawa and the city of Ottawa?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. So you'd be...
Council, if you just allow a brief indulgence, we're having a bit of difficulty locating
that. Maybe I'll move on to the next topic and then I'll come back to that. In terms of the Coots incident that Mr. Mather was just discussing with you, were you aware that there were a number of individuals who traveled from Ottawa to who were at the Freedom Convoy event in Ottawa, who then traveled to Coots?
No, sir.
And in particular, to clarify, referring to individuals who were charged as part of that RCMP operation.
No, sir.
When just a moment ago, when you were describing we were looking at a photo of some sort of body armor that had the diagolon symbol on it, and you were expressing some concerns about the authenticity of the diagolon symbol there. Just to be clear, were you suggesting that the diagolon symbol had been planted there by law enforcement?
Again, at the time and still, I am skeptical of the RCMP in particularly, but law enforcement in Canada, there is a history of things like this taking place. It's not outside the realm of possibility that something like that is very easily replicated, could be planted. I'm not suggesting that it certainly has or has not, but I would leave that open to possibility, yes.
I take it there's still some issue in pulling up that video?
Correct, Council.
Is it going to be a while, or should this be put off to a little later?
This may take a little while, Commissioner.
Okay. So maybe if you're agreeable, you can complete your examination subject to this video and we can slot you in a little bit in maybe 10 minutes whenever this is sorted out?
Yes, that's fine. I did have one other video clip that I wanted to play. Is it possible to pull up a different video clip?
Sure, Council, I can
global
assist if you have the doc ID.
Yes, okay, it's COM 50911, the video that was played earlier. And if we could just start that around the 30-second mark.
With that, thanks, from me to you in this palace they occupy as a federal agent.
When there isn't anything I want.
I'll see you when I see you, and I'll upload when I can upload and do what I can do. Cheers, guys. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I hope you had a good time. I hope you feel better. All you truckers out there, all you guys, hold the fuck down. Nobody's going anywhere. You're not scaring anybody. We want to fucking dance? Let's dance. Force a tyrant to act like one. And oh, did we succeed in that? And as promised, I want to play you this video. It's from my good dear friend Greg Arcade. You're a legend and a wonderful man. I love you, brother. Thank you so much for the work that you've done and continue to do for this country and your people. You're an underrated person, and in the words of the ferryman's toll,
And so earlier you mentioned that there were some videos in which you had urged people in Ottawa not to use violence, not to act unlawfully. Do you view your comments, you want to dance, let's dance, or I believe it was hold the fuck down? Do you view those comments as in line with your earlier messaging?
It was my intention to convey that the protesters and the demonstrators had no intention of relinquishing their right to peacefully demonstrate. It was clear at the time that the rumblings and things I'd been hearing and seeing that it was the intention of the federal government to use force to dispel these people. So, as I said in the video, and I've been saying for a long time, is to force a tyrant to act like one, you simply refuse to bend to their will, and they will reveal themselves to be who they are. And in this case, they deployed the RCMP and various police forces and beat people with batons and shot them with tear gas canisters and trampled an Indigenous elderly woman with a horse. Another man was dragged lifelessly through a crowd, and so on. So that was the price that people were willing to pay and endure for the Canadian people, to show them the true face of what it was they were standing against.
Okay, thank you. Subject, if I might ask for just 2 minutes later to address that issue with the video.
I think it's now available.
Oh, it is.
So, Council, I believe it's been renumbered to POE.DOJ 6014.
Okay,
it's an
understood.
8-minute long video, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
If we could start it at the 55-second mark, please.
I'm sure a lot of people have been seeing this. Randy Hillier has spoken about this already. Tomorrow, allegedly, there's some kind of deal being signed or agreed upon by, the quote-unquote truckers with the city, with the government, however, where they're going to move some vehicles and relocate and this kind of stuff. It's been expressed to me by people, connected inside the movement there to the actual truckers, that this leadership cell of political operatives like Dichter and Dagny are not playing. They're not on side, guys. I was told they haven't released a dime of the money at all. These guys are sitting out there, they're paying. They got $9,000 a month to making these payments on these trucks, and they're not getting paid. They're missing mortgage payments now. And this deal tomorrow is fraudulent. A lot of the names that are attached to it,
That's good,
people,
yeah.
have
So I mentioned a deal earlier between protest organizers and the city. Does that video, does that refresh your memory about that issue?
Yeah, apologies a bit. I was unclear as to what you were referring to. It's something. I think there was some kind of negotiation was taking place to move some trucks from one place to another. I wasn't intimately involved. I don't know exactly the details of that, but to some extent, I'm not sure exactly.
Safe to say you were urging your followers not to go along with that deal.
I was expressing concern because at that time there was a number of names that had appeared that somehow had gotten into the leadership cadre or something, as you could describe, that I was very skeptical of their intentions, and I had some skepticism and fear that this was things were moving in a malicious direction.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, I think it's the Ottawa Coalition of Residents and Businesses.
Good afternoon, Mr. MacKenzie. I'm not sure if you can see me there. My name is Paul Champ. I'm a lawyer for the Ottawa Coalition of Residents and Businesses, the people from downtown Ottawa. Just have a couple questions for you. You mentioned in your testimony about getting the screen captures of text, group texts from RCMP officers. You got that from a current RCMP member, is that right?
At the time it was delivered to me, I understood that to be the case. I can't speak to if this person is still employed or not.
Okay. And do you occasionally have interactions of people who are fans or interested in what you say, or supporters who are current members of law enforcement?
Yes, that's correct.
And while you were in Ottawa, were you, during the convoy protest, were you in communication with some of these individuals who are current law enforcement members and are supporters of yours?
Not directly, no.
And have you ever been in contact with, or anyone communicated to you who is a current member of the Canadian Security Intelligence Service who's a supporter of you or a fan of you?
No, I've actually made numerous overtures and offers to speak to the Canadian Security Intelligence Service to try to shed some light on myself and this community that they seem so concerned about. And as of today is the first day that I've ever been asked a single question by anyone in any official capacity about it.
Right. And you mentioned that you had 3 or 4 people, or sometimes as many as 20 people staying with you in the same location in Ottawa. Is that right?
Correct, yes.
And those were up to 20 people who were supporters or fans of yours?
Yes, that's correct.
And some of these people were former members of the military or current members of the military? Veterans like yourself?
Do not think so. I'd have to go through a list and refresh my memory, but no one's jumping out at me. I don't think so. I believe they're all civilians.
Okay. Did any of them bring any firearms with them?
No, sir. I actually went out of my way to make sure that was adamantly very clear that would not be something I would endorse, and is not a good idea. And again, would be a very dangerous situation. It's illegal and it's undermining the objectives of the protesters.
For sure. Yeah, you were concerned about that, right? That some people in the protest might undermine the purpose of the protest by becoming violent. And you didn't want that to happen, correct?
That's correct.
And that's why you made that message out to people to not be violent. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Because you knew some of the people who were there could be volatile and could be violent. Is that right?
I understand that in great numbers of people and tens of thousands of people, there is always going to be outliers of folks who may be unhinged, they may be mentally ill, there could be any number of factors that may contribute to something, and I was just doing my best to mitigate any influence that I have to try to push things in a positive direction, rather than say nothing or worse, contribute to something negative happening.
And when you were in Ottawa, did you have contact with Mr. Randy Hillier?
I met with Mr. Hillier once, maybe twice. He didn't have much of a voice. He was feeling under the weather, but yeah, I met him once or twice.
While you were in Ottawa?
Correct.
And when you got the information about the RCMP text, did you pass that on to anyone in the convoy leadership?
No, sir. I looked at it. I sat with it for about 10 minutes, and I just decided to publish it on my Telegram page for everyone to look at. And from there, it went to Counter Signal, Key and Bexty, Rebel News took it, various other independent journalists and so on took note of it. Notably, the legacy media, CBC, and so on, did not comment or provide any coverage or insight of that. But I simply just put it out there, and it went off on its own into the wild.
And you met with Mr. Hillier. Did you meet with any other elected political officials while you were in Ottawa during the convoy protests?
No, sir.
Either federally or provincially?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And you'd indicated in your testimony that you met Miss Tamara Leach this summer?
I spoke to her on the phone. I did see Tamara Leach briefly. She walked by me somewhere in a hotel lobby, but I hadn't any formal interaction, conversation, or anything with her until I spoke to her on the phone sometime in, I want to say, August.
And the two of you, you were discussing, what was the topic you were discussing? The upcoming inquiry or other issues?
No, she had actually called to express concern and so on for my legal situation.
For your legal situation?
Yes, outside of this.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. MacKenzie.
Okay, thank you. Next, the Ottawa Police Service.
Good afternoon, Mr. MacKenzie. My name is Jessica Barrow, and I'm counsel for the Ottawa Police Service. Can you see and hear me all right?
Yes, I can. Hello.
Excellent. I'm going to start with something that you testified to earlier, and you indicated that in the lead up to the events in Ottawa, you were of the view that this was not going to be what you referred to as an in and out event. But just to be clear, you were not one of the organizers of this event, correct?
That's correct. I believe I may have been misconstrued as such or perceived to be a bigger personality in this simply because of my social media presence and a video that I had released basically reacting to the convergence of the trucks moving towards Ottawa. I was, kind of excited by it and interested in what was going to happen. That video achieved a fair amount of traction and plays. So I think maybe people associated me with that for that reason. However, I had no time to have any contact with any organizers. I didn't ask for any money, take any money, give any money. I had no hand in logistics, planning, anything like that. I was simply there of my own volition to observe and, just be there for the experience.
So you really had no knowledge as to the specific intentions of the organizers, except for whatever perhaps you were seeing online. Is that fair?
As far as the intentions were concerned, I was basically just collating the information that I could find in social media, what people were saying. I was aware of who some of the people were for that reason, and they were echoing the same, similar kind of sentiments. They were there to protest and show their discontent and exercise their rights to do so and so on. I didn't see anything disagreeable with that. I didn't see any intentions of, violence or so on.
Right, but with respect to your comment in terms of this not being an in and out event, Are you aware that the organizers, or some of them, testified earlier this week that this event became much more significant than they had really anticipated?
No, I was not. I haven't been able to view much of or hear much of what's transpired earlier. It was apparent to me just simply because of the Canada's a very large country, and the effort required just to simply go to Ottawa from Alberta and British Columbia, in Halifax and so on, indicated to me, and the numbers at which people were going indicated to me that this was not going to be a quick trip to the city, as it were.
Are you aware that, similarly, that some of the organizers testified that they had not anticipated staying as long as they ultimately did?
No, I'm not.
Okay. I'm going to move on to the issue of social media. Obviously, we heard some testimony from you today about your particular use of social media. Would you agree with me that social media is a tool that some people use to influence the actions of others?
Yes, of course.
In fact, it's actually a career now, being a social media influencer.
Yes, some people make a living that way.
And it's a tool that's used to encourage people to buy things, or used for social advocacy?
Yes, I think it's empowered a lot of people to express their voice in the world and establish themselves as such. If they want to act similarly to the way that corporate broadcasting and larger companies and stuff do to push whatever products, ideas, and things that they want to, they can now compete with them in that same kind of space, I suppose.
So then I take it you would agree with me that social media has the power, both unintentionally and intentionally, to influence the actions of others.
I would say that anything that anyone is paying a large amount of attention to.
If you just hold on a moment, your counsel is standing up here.
I'm not sure social media can have an intent. I'm not sure the question is precise, and I'm not sure how relevant it is in the circumstances. Perhaps social media users could have that kind of power, but my client, I don't think it's fair for him to testify about the power that social media has in terms of intent and lack of intent.
I was speaking specifically to social media influencers, but I'm happy to be more clear if that's required.
I think we have to be more clear. Social media is something we should be looking into, but
Sure.
you could try and rephrase the question.
Happy to. So to be clear, Mr. MacKenzie, I'm speaking obviously specifically to the users that are using social media. And in terms of influencing others, my question was, would you agree with me that those using social media can both intentionally and unintentionally influence others?
Yes, of course. I would imagine that any form of media, whether it's social media, television, movies, music, and if they're inundated, especially in sort of a way that becomes a large focus of their day-to-day lives, then it would have an impact on the way that they view things, of course.
And you indicated earlier that depending on the platform and depending on the specific post, that anywhere between tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of people have followed you.
It's unclear. There's no real way to measure, but tens of thousands would probably be a fair assessment, yes.
I think you may have indicated that one of your YouTube videos may have garnered up to 500,000 views. Do I have that incorrect?
No, several of them have in the past, yes.
Okay. So I'm not going to take you to this specific document, but for the record, it's OPP 835, and it's a document published by the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, which I take from your earlier testimony you disagree with, but it describes Diagolon, also referred to as Plaid Army, as a conspiracy-based network that is increasingly evolving into a militia comprising neo-fascists who anticipate a violent revolution which they will seize power. I take it you disagree with that assessment of the organization. Is that fair?
Yes, I disagree, and I don't agree that this is my imagination is an organization of any kind. I'm not clear on what neo-fascist accelerationist means. And in my opinion, the Canadian Anti-Hate Network is not a credible news or information research source.
Fair enough, but I take it you would agree with me that at least some people might interpret your messaging in that way? Because obviously the Canadian Anti-Hate Network does.
Again, sure. I can't control how people interpret or don't interpret, any number of things. I can only control the things that I say and conduct myself the best that I can. And if it's interpreted the wrong way, then I'm happy to clarify. But I can't, again, be expected to control the interpretations of other people.
Fair enough. I'll just ask one more question because I believe I'm getting the signal that I'm out of time. But as a follow-up to that, there were a few veiled references to violence that we saw earlier council take you to, and you indicated in response to those that it certainly wasn't your intention to promote violence and that your followers would know that. Is that a fair assessment of your answer?
Yes, I think so.
But it's true that you have not obviously spoken to all of your followers, right?
Well, I don't exactly take attendance, so there's no way to know who is listening to me at any number of times. All I can do is use my platforms accordingly, and if it's listened to or not by individual people is not within my control.
And so you obviously couldn't know how they're interpreting your message.
No.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay, next is the Ontario Provincial Police.
Commissioner, I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, next is counsel for former Chief Slowly.
Commissioner, also no questions for the witness. Thank you.
Okay, next is the Government of Alberta.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have no questions either.
Okay, the Democracy Fund, JCCF.
This is Antoine Dailly for the Citizens for Freedom. Our group would like to cede our time to counsel for the witness.
Oh, that seems to be a popular person, Mr. Foda. I guess it's your turn. They seem to have collected a lot of support.
I won't need all the time, Mr. Commissioner, but I'm happy to commence now.
Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. MacKenzie. Can you see me?
Yes, sir.
This is the first time you've seen me actually on video.
That is correct.
I want to start off with just covering some of the questions that you were asked by the last council for the Ottawa Police Service.
Okay.
The Canada Anti-Hate Network, you were asked about sort of the information that they've put out there about you. Are you aware if the Canada Anti-Hate Network has itself spread any misinformation during the convoy?
Yes, as a matter of fact, the president or the chief, as I understand it, Mr. Farber, was on national television advising the nation of Canada that anti-Semitic flyers were being distributed throughout downtown Ottawa as a result of the nature of the people involved, when in fact that was a screen grab from an event in Miami, Florida that had taken place weeks earlier.
And do you know if the Canada Anti-Hate Network's views about you have been relied upon by law enforcement or other senior officials in the federal government?
Yes, I have, through, again, legal disclosure, documents referenced by law enforcement, open source intelligence, and so on. There are a number of pages and articles and things written by the Canadian Anti-Hate Network used as justification for their assessment of me.
And have you ever had any communication with anyone from the Canada Anti-Hate Network?
I have, actually. One of their journalists, Mr. Smith, I believe, reached out to me in just as late as February of this year. Previous to that, no one had ever approached me for a comment or explanation. They were content to just publish things, sometimes with no bylines whatsoever, written by ostensibly no one. I attempted to explain and kind of level, man to man with Mr. Smith about, who I am and so on. That didn't really go anywhere. I'd also been in contact informally, casually with Mr. Kurt Phillips over Twitter over the past several months before I was banned.
And did your conversations have anything to do about the convoy or your alleged extremist activities?
No, they were pretty casual in nature, just about kind of surface level things about other personalities and stuff. Other maybe casual bits, sometimes different beers that we enjoyed, things like this.
You were asked questions about social media and social media influencers and their ability to either unintentionally or intentionally influence others. What are your views on legacy media being able to do that?
Well, again, yeah, with seeing the size of the platform that it has and the amount of funding that's being dumped into it from the Canadian taxpayer, it's one of the bigger microphones that exists, and it's my opinion that it has an extreme amount of bias and has been almost weaponized in that way to push state and government messaging to influence and perhaps correct the way that people are thinking as it benefits the people that pay their bills.
I'd like to pull up POE.JMK701. It's an article from the Globe and Mail. Can you see this article on your screen, Mr. MacKenzie?
Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with it?
No, I've never seen this before.
Okay, if we could scroll down a little bit and stop right there for a moment. Could you please read that, Mr. MacKenzie, and tell us when you're done?
Yes, sir. You want me to read it aloud or just quiet silent?
No, just to yourself. I'm going to just cover some of the content in that.
Okay. Yeah, I've got it. Thanks.
Okay, if we could go down a little bit further.
Okay.
And a little bit further.
Okay.
And then just a little bit further.
Okay.
So this was an article that was published around February 16th after the Emergencies Act was invoked by the government.
Okay.
And there are comments made by Public Safety Minister about that were later clarified by his spokesperson. Mr. Mendocino didn't name any organization during the news conference, but his spokesperson, Alexander Cohen, later said that the minister's remarks were in reference to Diagolon.
I see.
If we could go up just a little bit further to the comments that were actually made by Mr. Mendocino. Further up, please. Right there. So, quote, "It could have been deadly for citizens, protesters, and officers. We need to be clear-eyed about the seriousness of these incidents, and indeed, several of the individuals at Coots have strong ties to a far-right extreme organizations with leaders who are in Ottawa." How many members, how many of the individuals at Coots did you have any ties to?
Just the Mr. Lysak, who I met twice.
And would you consider that to be strong ties?
No.
Would you consider this to be an example of misinformation or no?
Yes, I would.
I'd like to pull up some of the clips, sir, that council have referenced, but that we've not actually gone over with you. If I could first ask that JMK 000, I think there's 7 zeros and 4. And this is a clip I understand from your social media dated January 23rd of this year, sir.
So as long as everybody just keeps their head, don't do anything stupid, say anything stupid, anything, nothing illegal, don't even speed. Don't give them anything.
Where was that video taken, sir?
That video was filmed outside downtown the waterfront in Pictou, Nova Scotia, where I live.
And what was your intent in putting out that video?
That was the day or 2 days prior to me heading down to Ottawa. I know a lot of people were on their way. They were excited to go and so on. It was my intent to try and set a tone of extreme levels of situational awareness and attentiveness to the fact that there would be a lot of scrutiny on everyone. And so it was imperative that people conduct themselves in a responsible and lawful manner.
If we could play another clip, please, 702, JMK 702. This is a clip I understand, Mr.
And if you...
Sorry, if we could just go back to the beginning. Mr. MacKenzie, I understand this was taken on January 28th. If you could please just watch it.
Please be on your best behavior. And if you see anything odd or strange or makes you nervous or uncomfortable, leave. Leave immediately. And keep your phone, your camera is probably your best defense. If you see anything strange, film it.
Where was this video taken, sir?
That video appears to be taken in the residence I mentioned earlier that we stayed at a large amount of the time outside the city of Ottawa.
And what was the message that you were trying to convey?
I was just trying to keep people safe. And again, if they know, I obviously wouldn't want them to intervene into something that seemed, unsafe or dangerous. But if they could, I believe that as dangerous as they can be, the smartphones that people have can be their best defense. They can film, what's happening around them and protect themselves in that way. And if they were to encounter or see anything disturbing or frightening or alarming, then they should leave and get away from that, and then potentially even report it to authorities if necessary.
Speaking about reporting things to authorities, have you ever reported extremist behavior to authorities?
Yes.
Can you please tell us about that?
One example, let's see, would have been fall, I think, of 2021. There was a group online identifying themselves as Lynx something. It was armed men in the woods with masks. One of them specifically said, this is a call to arms, which, as I understand, is an illegal thing to do. It was very clear that they intended to, we're promoting the idea of arming people, arming citizens. I think it was an acronym for Liberate Your Neighborhood or something like that. And to engage the forces of the state in violent confrontation. They were commenting on my videos and inferring that they were trying to connect with me and so on. I found this very alarming, and again, putting potentially myself at risk, but other people that follow me and it could be exposed to this and ensnared in whatever was going on there. So once I became aware of the video, I immediately called the mounted police about it.
And did you receive a response?
I did. They called me back. They asked me, what I knew about it. If anything, I said, all I know is what I've seen on the internet. I'm simply bringing it to your attention because if I were you, this is something that would concern me. And that was pretty much the end of that interaction. I'm not sure whatever took place after that, but.
You didn't have follow-up after that?
I don't think so. I think there was one constable from Saskatchewan that may have called me to say they may have more questions in the future, but that was the end of that interaction.
Were you willing to have a continuous relationship with law enforcement to assist them in identifying legitimate threats to public safety?
Of course, if there was anything for me to give them or assist them in any way, I would have, yes. I'd like to play another clip, JMK
1. And my understanding is that this is a clip from February 5th.
Support each other. Tell the truth. Be good. Don't do anything stupid, and don't give in to their attempts to goad you into anything they can use against you. Because this is literally all they have at this point. This couple of sentences out of context on the internet, and an old man at a gas station. It's ridiculous, you know? Meanwhile, the high horse they stand on. Oh, we're so much better people. We're so much better people. We're morally superior, said the man in blackface.
Where were you when this video was taken, sir?
I believe I was traveling back to Ottawa from the Maritimes.
Okay. Can you please tell the commissioner sort of what your itinerary was during the convoy protests?
From beginning to end, or?
Yeah, my understanding is that you were not in Ottawa the entire time. Can you sort of just go over in general terms your itinerary?
So I left the Maritimes, again, a couple of days. I arrived 1 or 2 days before the trucks showed up. I picked up a couple of friends and associates. They wanted to go. It was kind of a carpool idea. I said I would take them. We went down, met up with some people, stayed at the location I mentioned. And then after roughly 5 days or so, these gentlemen had to go home. I drove them home. I'd only intended to stay for that length of time. And then when I got home, I decided it was unclear how long this was going to go on. So I decided to go back a few days later. That's around that time when I made that video. And then I stayed in Ottawa, the Ottawa area, for the duration until probably 3 to 4 days after the invocation of the Emergency Act, and everyone was cleared out of downtown. Then my partner and I left and we headed back to the Maritimes.
When you were in Ottawa, did you engage in any illegal activity?
No.
Did you bring a vehicle?
Yes, I drove my personal vehicle. It's a pickup truck.
Where did you park?
Either on the farm where we were staying, or hotel parking lots that I would stay at, or if it was in the interest of going downtown to see the protest, I would park in parking lots and that were available as close as possible, and then walk the remaining couple of blocks.
Did you pay for parking?
Yes.
Did you assault anyone while you were in Ottawa?
No.
Threaten anyone while you were there?
No.
Did you engage in violent behavior?
No, sir.
Were you armed?
No.
Were you charged with any offenses in relation to your participation in the convoy in Ottawa?
No, sir.
Do you believe, or do you know whether or not your public political commentary has drawn the ire of officials?
That is my belief, yes.
Sir, you were asked questions about whether you had any, whether Diagolon had any structure. I think you were asked if you had any formal authority over anyone in the Diagolon community. And I believe you indicated that there was no hierarchy or no formal structure.
Correct.
To be fair, you have a vice president.
Yes.
Could you tell the commissioner who your vice president is?
The vice president is of Diagolon, which is of my imagination. He is my sidekick that has evolved over the years. He's a demonic goat figurine named Philip with a very, very serious narcotics problem and time traveling ability.
Do you think any reasonable person who consumes your content either regularly or semi-regularly would actually consider Diagolon to be an organization?
I would think not, no.
How do you explain what is included in intelligence reports and what is expressed in national media and expressed by ministers of the highest level in our country?
It's my opinion that the foundational work by the Canadian Anti-Hate Network as pertains to targeting me as a previously government-funded, has enjoyed a fair amount of government funding to target and smear people that they, consider perhaps politically inconvenient or people that just want to shut up. They regularly engage in defamatory statements, libelous action, things like this. Out of context statements, they'll take a clip here, a sentence there, and stitch it together and make it appear as something that it is not. From there, some media outlets, legacy media outlets, lazily, unfortunately, it appears, took it at face value, copy, paste, print the story, then which is consumed by police officers, which, again, unfortunately, rather than doing any digging themselves or investigating or asking me a single question, take these things at face value and compile these reports, and up the network it goes until it lands on the desk of the public safety minister or perhaps even the prime minister's office, where they're faced with these scenarios that have no basis in reality. I consider this entire situation entirely avoidable. This none of this needed to happen. It's absurd, and I consider it the single most embarrassing and grotesque intelligence failure in national history.
Mr. Mather, when he first started asking you questions, clarified that you're obviously testifying from in custody?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And my understanding is you have no criminal record?
That's correct.
How do you intend on pleading to all of the charges that you face?
Not guilty.
Those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. Any re-examination?
No, Mr. Commissioner, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for your testimony, Mr. MacKenzie, and good luck with your trials.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, next, we're going to take the afternoon break, and then we'll come back with our final witness of the day and of the week.
The commission is in recess for 15 minutes. La commission est levée pour 15 minutes.